It has been quite a while since I have roasted any code on my channel, so that's what I'm going to be doing today. I'll be doing a Go code roast where I review some code I have never seen before. Hi, I'm Jonathan Hall. Today I'm going to be looking at some Go code I've never seen before and providing my commentary. I'll be talking about the things I like, the things I don't like, and the questions I would have for the author of this code if they had been applying for a job. And I was reviewing this code as part of that application process. So let's have a look at some code. Now, the project I'm looking at today is one the author gave me permission to look at it. We connected on the Gopher Slack in the jobs discussion channel. But let's have a look and see if I like this code, what I do and don't like, and whether I would offer this person an interview or reject them outright. So the first place I usually look when reviewing code is the go.mod file. This gives me a nice sense of what's involved in the code, how complex it is, what kind of dependencies there are, and so on. So right off the bat, I have a couple complaints. The first one is that the module is called example.com/hello. That's not a bug or technically a problem, but I don't like it. Let me explain. The module is the import path for the project. Now, for an example project, that's not really a big deal, but nobody could ever import this project because it's on an invalid domain name and the module name doesn't match. My preference would be to use github.com/Theodorant1/golang secret Hitler as the module name. Assuming that this is just a single executable and there are no libraries inside of it, nobody's likely to be importing it anyway. Since there's nothing probably to import. Let's just verify this. Package main. There's only a single package in this module called main, so it's not really a big problem, but I would certainly ask the author about that in the interview. I would ask why they chose this name. Technically, the module path could be anything. It could just be the word hello, for example. Like, it doesn't need to have a domain name, but that just means that it can't be imported. So that would be a problem, or a potential problem. Even if my project is just a main package that's never imported, I still like to follow the convention of using a proper module name. If I ever extend it, I don't want to have to rename the module. It uses Go 1.20, nothing wrong there. Go 1.21 is out as of this recording. Now, one thing that concerns me here, I'm going to check out this code and validate, but there is one import, which isn't a problem. I don't know what that does. I don't know that import path. I don't know what that module does. However, there's no go.sum file along with it, and there should be if there are any imports. So probably just an oversight that go.sum wasn't committed along with go.mod, but it should have been. So that's a problem and something I would definitely ask the author about. Other than that, I like that there are no other imports. I am going to look up what this import does, just out of curiosity more than anything. So it supports encoding and decoding between Morse and text. I suppose that means Morse code, dots and dashes. Yeah, that's what it is. So it supports Morse code encoding and decoding. Kind of interesting. Let me go ahead and check it out. So I'll clone it locally, and we'll have a look. So you'll see when I run go.mod tidy, it creates that go.sum for me. That should be part of the repo. It's very trivial, it's just 2 lines, but that should be included in the repo. So that's the first problem I see. That's not just a matter of personal opinion. Speaking of personal opinion, I don't like the capitalization. We have main with capital M for match, etc. It's not problematic. I mean, it technically works, but it's not standard. So I don't know why the author chose to do this, or maybe their tools did this for them. Maybe they're using some sort of IDE or Git GUI that capitalizes that for them, or maybe it's just a preference, but it's non-standard. So that's, again, not a problem. I just find it unusual. And then they're not consistent. Here there's 2 files that are lowercase, handlers and stage enum. So if you're going to capitalize, at least be consistent, in my opinion. Let's have a look at the code. We'll start with main.go. That seems like a reasonable place to start, where the main function is defined. I'm unsure why there's a bunch of commented out code here. I don't know if this is meant to be an example or if it's code that's just dead. I would delete it. It's confusing. Obviously, I'm confused. If it's meant to be an example, put it in the Go doc. Make a Go doc section here for the main and say, this is how you use this code or something like that. Make it clear that it's an example. Otherwise, delete it. Just delete your dead code. Aside from that, we have 2 things that happen here. We instantiate a variable called tester, sort of, tester, which is of type tester, and then we call test match on it. Now, I don't have any idea what that does. It's not clear. So 2 comments on that. First, it should be clear what it's doing. Like, I don't know what tester means. Maybe it makes sense in the context of this program, but it doesn't make sense yet. Like it needs to be explained in some way. So I think there's room for clarity improvement here. And maybe that just means not calling this tester or giving it or calling it something more specific, a certain kind of tester. What is it testing? So there's room for clarity improvement there. The other thing is this should not be capitalized. It's not technically wrong, but in Go, capitalized symbols are exported when they're defined at the package level. This one is not defined at the package level. It's defined within the function. So it's not exported. And on a 2-line main function, it's not a big deal. But imagine that imagine this code wasn't deleted and I had a reference to this capital T, ESTR variable lower down. It might look like it's an exported variable. So as a matter of style and preference for improving readability, I always encourage the use of lowercase variable names, constants, etc. all the time, except when they are actually exported, because this looks like it's exported even though it's not. So that's a stylistic thing. I would bring that up in the interview and ask the author's reason for doing that. That would not disqualify them from working for me. Another stylistic thing, I don't like this extra new line here or the new line at the end, purely stylistic. I like to use a tool called GoFumt, GOFUMT, which is a stricter version of GoFumt, GOFMT, which would enforce that for you. But again, that's stylistic. Now, I should have run this already on my local machine. Let me do that. So one of the first things I should do is run the tests. I've already seen that there aren't any tests, no test files. So that's a big red flag. I would be asking the author, definitely, why aren't there tests? I definitely expect my programmers that I'm hiring or working with on production software to be writing tests. So if you're not writing tests on your example projects that you're trying to impress me with, that's a problem. So there should be some tests, definitely. And I would be asking the author, why are there tests? Do you have a reason? And they may have a reason. It's probably not a great one, but I would be asking about that. Let's continue looking at the code. So we have this tester type. I don't know where that's defined. Well, let's just, buttons and tester.go. There it is. So type tester is a struct with no field. Okay, but now actually, before I dive into that, I do want to comment one thing I really like about this main function. Aside from the code that's commented out, so ignoring that, pretending it's not there, I love how short this function is. It's 2 lines. Your main function should virtually always be really short. And this goes back to what I was just talking about, tests. It's difficult. It's not impossible, but it's very difficult to test and often impossible to test thoroughly a main function. Yeah. So one of the easiest ways to make your code testable is to not put much logic in your main function. My main functions usually just call another function, and that's effectively what's happening here. It's not calling a raw function, it's calling a method, but that's logically equivalent. So I love that about this. That means that it would be, in principle, very easy to test this test match function, I think. I haven't looked at the details of it yet. But in principle, by calling another function from main, we can test that function. We can leave main essentially untested. We can just test it visually or confirm it, validate it visually, and then add tests on the function that is called from main. So that's one thing I really do like about this. I don't know why the author did it this way. I don't think it was for this reason because there are no tests, but I do like it regardless. So now let's look at that test match function and see what it actually does. Again, there's some commented out code here that should just be deleted. It's a distraction when I'm reading it. Some of it looks like debug. Here we're putting out some stuff. Just delete that. And when you're done debugging, delete it. I understand putting it there during debugging. I'm not complaining about that. But leaving it in there makes it hard to read. It looks, from a professional standpoint, evaluating this as a job application, it looks sloppy. It looks like you kind of forgot to clean up your mess. You know, you baked a cake and left the eggshells on the counter. And if this was production code, it just makes the readability harder. It looks unfinished, and it makes the reader, as you see right now, think about it, which is not ideal. You don't want the reader of your code to be thinking, why is this here? You want them to be understanding what the code does, and that's all. So we define a variable called match that is of type mat, which is apparently a struct. I suppose we'll get to. Then we define players 1 and 2, whose names are Picard 1 and Picard 2, apparently. Oh, and 3, 4, 5. We have a bunch of players. They're all named Picard 1 through 6. Okay. Then we add these players to match. So I think match means a match in the sense of a game match, not the match in the sense of two things that are the same. That's what it appears to be. Maybe when I look at the definition of this match type, it will be more clear. That would be something to consider improving by naming. When I first saw match, I was thinking like regular expression or something like that. I don't know. Something to think about. I don't have a clear recommendation, maybe calling it game or I don't know. But it's unclear exactly what it is. While I'm on that topic, let me look at the match definition and see if it makes it clear. No, it is more clear in context, looking at all the fields that it doesn't mean a regular expression match. There should be some Godoc here at minimum to explain. Match is an individual match within a game. Some games, have multiple matches per game or multiple games per matches, depending on the terminology used. It would be great to explain what that means here. It would also be great to not export this. It's the main package, so you can't export things from main, but the same comments I just made a moment ago apply here. It looks like it's exported, and it makes people think, G, is this exported, or Y, is this exported? And so it increases the cognitive load or the difficulty in reading the code by making it unclear that it's not exported. So just don't capitalize anything in Go that isn't exported is a great rule of thumb to just slightly increase the readability of your code, make it a little bit more obvious what's going on. It's also unclear to me why this thing is called tester. That seems like a strange name for a function. I still don't know what it does. Maybe I'll have a better idea for a name as I continue reading, but it's not at all clear what it does. It's not clear why we have an empty struct. Empty structs are great when they make sense. I don't know why we have that here. It looks like, so far, there's only a single method on tester, and it's test match. This should just be a function. I don't see why it's a method at all. Maybe the author is accustomed to writing everything as method from learning Java or something, and maybe that's why they did this. I don't know. So my advice would be to make this just a straight function. Just call it test match. Get rid of this tester type. If the tester type is necessary, don't make the receiver the same name as the type. That's confusing, and it makes it impossible to reference the type within the function. This should just be called T by convention or something short. But in general, don't make this a method. I don't see any reason to make it a method at all. Maybe I'll change my mind as I continue reading, but I don't see any reason it should be a method. I think it should just be a straight function and just call it test. I guess call it test match. I still don't know what that means. So hopefully I'll have a better suggestion for a name by the time I'm done reading it. All right, then we have this thing called exporter. Don't know what that does yet. We'll find out. And then we create a request. And apparently we export request. We put a player password and a game password. Game ID, okay. It's not clear what's happening yet, but hopefully it will become clear. And then we call get export JSON struct. That's a confusing name. I guess we're trying to get a struct that we can export. I'm not sure. We'll get there. Reply each from export into JSON. I don't know what that does. I mean, I like it. Based on the name, it sounds like it's calling Jason Marshall, but it makes me wonder why not just call Jason Marshall. But I guess we'll find out. And then it just prints out the output. So it doesn't look to me like this is a fully functional game. Well, you know what? Why don't I open it up locally? Have a better code navigation that way than GitHub related code. All right. So test match. Jump over there. Now I was interested in export. Let's define it other structs. That's a terrible name for a file. It doesn't tell me anything, which is why I couldn't find it. Give your file names meaningful names. I mean, in this case, I would probably put exporter in exporter.go and election in election.go or something like that. Yeah, if you want to separate it out like that. But like other structs, say with names like helpers or utils, they tell you nothing. You can't. It's like just saying stuff. Or code. Code.go contains code. Yeah, we know it contains code. We know that other structs contain other stuff. I mean, I guess it's slightly more descriptive than helpers in that we know structs are defined there. But just describe its functionality rather than just giving it a generic name. Anyway, we're here about exporter. Exporter is an empty struct. It's an indication that this should just be a function, not method, but we'll see. As I mentioned, there are times to use empty structs, and I do use them fairly frequently, but it could be a sign. So get export JSON struct, the first one that we saw, and it returns this export JSON type, which is this. Okay. We don't know what a lot of this means. Player names is fairly descriptive, although it probably should be camel case. Libdex, I don't know what that means. I don't know if dex is short for description. Fash dex, no idea what that means. Maybe the liberals and fascists, that's probably what that means. But then dex, I'm not sure what that means. So figure that out. Discarded policy should be camel case. Stylistic comments here mostly. President, chancellor, fash, power. I would spell these out, lib and fash, for the simple reason that it's not obvious to me or anybody else reading this code for the first time. It's not obvious. And fascists and liberals, they're a little bit longer to type, but they make reading so much easier. And that's kind of part of the Go ethos, is highly valued code readability over writability. So I would encourage spelling these words out and use camel case as is Go standard. All right, so that's what we're creating. We're creating this thing called export JSON. Oh, also this should be capitalized by Go standard. Acronyms should be all caps or all lowercase, depending on context, but not this mixed case for an acronym. All right, so here we call get precedence, and it returns 3 fields or 3 values. We only care about the third one, apparently. Don't know why. I suppose we'll figure that out. I'm very curious. I want to look at it right now. Get precedence returns 2 ints and a slice of string. Okay. This should be documented. It should be like I can't tell what these ints are yet. So the easy way to document that is to put return values here, or you could do Go doc. Also, there should be carriage returns here. This is another stylistic thing. There should be carriage returns, and that violates Go func. All right, let's see if Go func is even big run here. We run Go fmt minus SW. I'll put minus L to show the files have been changed. No files are changed. So this does pass Go func, the official format, and it's potentially done by the IDE he's using. But there's still a lot of style here I don't like. So I'm not going to criticize it too harshly because at least he's running Go func. But I think there should be a carriage return here. There should not be a carriage return here, or here, or here. That's the last I'm going to talk about formatting style, because, like I said, at least he's running Go FMT, but I still like this format. Okay, I'm trying to figure out what get precedence does, what these 2 integers represent. So let's find a return statement here. President index, next president index. Okay, so I would just do this. Index, next, next index, and then I don't know the name. Let's verify player name. Well, it says player name. Yeah, I would probably do this. That makes it more clear. Then I can just tell by looking at function definition, at least an idea of what these integers represent. Like when I started, I didn't know if they represented counts, how many presidents there are, or how many players there are, or what. No idea. So adding some documentation here would be really important. Let's go back to the discard by changes. So here we get player names 2. And then, okay, this is not necessary. There's no point. You never need to do var blah 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 equals nil. 0 value is good enough. Just do this. Just do this. This is silly, stylistic, but less readable. Use a not equals operator rather than not and then the equals operator. Makes it shorter. Makes it more obvious what's going on. Less cognitive load. Easier to read. And then here we return. And then here, you remember I'm commenting earlier that the transform export into JSON looks like it might just be calling JSON Marshall. That's exactly what it's doing, except that it prints errors to standard output, or not even standard output. Yeah, standard output rather than erroring. I don't see any value in doing that. Just call JSON Marshall over here, and then handle the error as you wish. I don't like this error handling. So this would be a red flag with an interview. I would really be asking the author why they did this. They have chosen an approach that tightly couples the internal capabilities of this function with the functions that call it. Let me explain. There is no way to call transform export into JSON and make a different decision about error handling. You can't choose to retry or to print a custom error message or to translate the error message to Spanish or to Chinese or whatever. There is no option. You can't even send it to standard error. It only goes to standard output. And it's the default error, and that's all. And then you get an empty reply. So that this, I will say objectively, this is bad code right here. It's not the most egregious error I've ever seen, but it's an easy one to fix. And the easy way to fix it is to just return an error here. And of course, by the time you return an error here, then there's no point to have this function at all. It's called JSON.marshal. So this code would be more robust, less tightly coupled, and easier to read and understand if we just did this. Boom. We can delete this other function. Our code is not tightly coupled anymore. It's easy to understand. I don't have to guess, is this doing JSON.marshal? I know exactly what it's doing. And we've eliminated a bug. Now, the bug is that if there's an error here, we print the error message out and then continue operating as normal, which means that in this case, it's not very serious. We would just print an empty string here. But supposing you were trying to do something with that reply, it might even crash with a nil pointer exception or something like that. So that's the particular consequences of this tight coupling and bug are minimal in this trivial gaming example, but it's an example of the types of problems that I have seen frequently, and it would raise questions. I would definitely be asking the author about this during the interview, and if I saw this sort of code in production, I would not be accepting that pull request at all. I would be pushing against the author. Let's continue. Now, we have other types here. Let's see if we can make sense of some of them. So one other comment I have on this export JSON type is I would expect to have JSON struct tags here. Now, it's not strictly necessary to do that. The JSON encoder, marshaller, will fall back to using the existing struct names as JSON field names, but that's a little bit problematic for a number of reasons. The first is that Go's idioms are different than, say, JSON or JavaScript idioms. So where Go would prefer something like player names, camel case, maybe if you're sending this to a JavaScript front end, you might want player underscore name. That you might want snake case, for example. But let's assume that you like the name, the defaults off. You like player names as written. Then the JSON struct tag becomes completely redundant, right? Except now, what if you want to change this to be standard to Go? Now you've broken your API. So by adding the JSON struct tags, you can decouple the Go struct field from the exported JSON struct names or field names, which is a really good thing. If we were to add my suggestion here to call this liberal, I don't know what Dex means, but let's just say that I do it like this, right? I don't necessarily want to break my public API that's exposed to the JSON marshalling. So maybe using the JSON struct tag would allow me to make internal changes that don't affect the public API. So that's something to consider. I would be asking the author about this in the interview as well. Why did you choose not to use struct tag? What are the possible consequences of not using struct tag, et cetera, et cetera. Now let's look at the logic here. I want to look at some of the other types it does. So here we call elect. Let's see what elect does. It just returns the string election. Confusing. So we have this type called game stage enum, and it just returns, this should not exist. But maybe this is intended for extension in the future, but these should just be constants. This should just be constant. Why are we calling a method? So okay, these are supposed to be stages. So yeah, okay, definitely use constants. Stage, election, equals. Election, stage, all the stages, policies. I don't know what those mean, but this is how this should be implemented. It should be constant. Makes the code so much easier to read. And you don't have these ridiculous methods on empty objects that don't do anything. This is what is meant anyway. So just make it obvious. Unreachable code. We'll talk about that in a second. I wonder just that I don't understand. Why is there a field in match of this type that never has a value? But that shouldn't exist either. So now, yeah, I suppose that would allow different implementations of the stage enums for different matches. Unless or until you actually need that, don't implement that. This is just way over engineered. Way over engineered. This should be about. I'm not going to do this for all 14 examples, but they should all be fixed. These should just be constant. They should not. There's absolutely no reason, as the game stands right now, there's no reason that this should be a type at all, let alone a type that it's changed per match. That's do a git checkout to undo all my changes. So I'm back to 15 stuff. All right, now I saw some unreachable code. So this is a problem. It's not a serious problem, but here we have, this code just never can be executed because we already handled it. And the same here. So fix that. Just either delete the code. That's the first thing to do. But better, these compound ifs and elses can be improved. There's no reason to have an else after a return. Just delete that else. And there's no reason to do that here either. And then it's obvious that this is a duplicate and it's not necessary. The code's more readable and you don't have that unreachable code. So just do that. Looks like we have a bunch of other unused code as well. Match handler is not used. Can be deleted. So I think that this game is incomplete. That's probably why I see some of this stuff going on. And that may very possibly, there's a very small chance that it will invalidate some of the comments I made, particularly around that enum. I still think that enum should be constants. It definitely should be constants right now. Start with constant, and if you get to the point where you need different enum types for different matches, then add that capability. But it's over-engineered right now. So that's my advice. So my two high-level pieces of advice to the author of this code: make it more readable. Add dodoc as necessary. Use descriptive names. That's the first thing. And then second, it's way over-engineered. Start with a simple approach. When you outgrow that, then add the complicated approach. But don't start with the complicated approach. This code is overcomplicated right now, and that contributes to it being difficult to understand and read. I'm not going to keep going through it. I've already been doing this for about a half an hour. I think that's enough on this project. As it stands, I would probably not be calling this person for an interview. There's just too many questions about this code. And a big part of that could be that it's an incomplete project. So I guess that's maybe my biggest piece of advice. Complete the project first before you send this to a potential employer to show off your Go capability. Get it complete and then show it off. Well, there you have my high-level overview of this particular project, my comments there. I want to give a big shout out and a big thank you to Dushan, who asked me to review his code. It takes a lot of courage to have somebody tear apart your personal code in public. So big thank you to Dushan for that. I hope you didn't take any of my comments too personally. We're here to help each other. If you would like me to review your code, or maybe even work with your team, maybe you would like me to help your team improve their code quality, let me know. Leave a comment below or head over to boldlygo.tech and you can find a contact link there. I do have some availability to help your team potentially improve their Go quality. So hit me up. If you're still watching, I hope that means you enjoyed the video. Hit the like button, and I hope you'll subscribe so you'll be around for the next Go Code Roast and my other content on this channel. Until next time, make it go.